Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Golf Rules Questions podcast. It's Roscoe here, your co-host, and sitting ably digitally alongside the Golf Rules Master himself once again for another week of Golf Rules Mania. Blakey, how are you, sir?
Yeah, very good, Roscoe. We still got our title of number one Golf Rules podcast in Australia.
Well, don't tell too many people because it might force them to make another Golf Rules podcast. But I believe that while we are the only golf podcast in Australia that's talking about and focusing and featuring the nuances, the subtleties, and the challenges that sometimes golf rules present to us all everyday golfers, we are probably the only one, so therefore number one. So yeah, well done to you again for churning out and turning up for another episode of your own podcast. I'll just sit here and press the buttons and learn along the way. Now, this week's podcast, we'll try and keep it a little bit brief because we're both very busy people in the world of golf. So we'll keep it to the point. I think today we might try that. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's give it a go.
I'm already going off point by going off point. So we're going to focus this episode on a handful of rules. So we might stick to 4, but there are more, and we might come back to the rest of them at another time. Rules that you may not realize that you are breaking when you are playing. So there's a few that are probably a little bit more obvious and people might get, but I reckon there are a few that a lot of people wouldn't realize that they are breaking them, and not in a mischievous way, but they just might not realize. So let's try and help everyone understand some of those, and we'll cover a few today, and we might come back in another episode, a few down the track, and cover those. But secondly, usually on the rundown, we talk about the Golf Rules question of the week. So obviously we had last week's Golf Rules question. We do a little bit of background bingo, and we do an IVOR if we've got an IVOR. No one ever came back to us about Waheen Neiman. You said, what can I say, Waheen? I reckon I'm right. Tell me I'm wrong. And what else? We've got some background bingo. Yeah, we can talk about that. So let's get into it, Blakey. What was last week's Golf Rules question? Let's tell everyone the answer to that and go from there.
Yeah, so last week's Golf Rules question of the week was about dropping the ball in the correct relief area. It hits the spot within the correct relief area and then hits your club and then goes outside the relief area. Is that is the next drop your first drop or a redrop? And so the idea of this question was to get the listener to understand, or the viewer on YouTube, to understand that if it hits the ground within the relief area first, it doesn't matter if it accidentally hits your equipment after that. It's still considered a correct drop with all other factors considered, such as dropping from knee height, etc. So the fact that it rolled outside the relief area meant it was a correct drop the first time, and now you are redropping. Okay? A redrop is you're dropping again correct under the correct circumstances to get your ball back into play.
Okay, so if it hits your club, you've made a correct drop. As long as you've done everything else correctly, you've made a correct drop, but you have to, and it's rolled outside the area, you've got to redrop it, and that's your second drop. Is that correct?
That's right. So if it had, the slight difference is if it had hit the club first. If it had hit the club first before it hits the ground in the relief area, it doesn't count as a correct drop.
So I guess the thing is, you may be taking a drop and obviously on a slope, but you still got to drop it. You can't place it. You don't want to risk your ball rolling down the face of the, whatever the entry point is into the penalty area. You might put a club there to stop the ball going into the water and not losing your ball. Is that sort of where this might be in play? And the ball rolls and the club stops it, and then you get to do it again and then drop it again and then place it. Correct?
Yeah, great example. I mean, you could even put your bag in the inside of the penalty area to stop the ball from rolling all the way into the penalty area.
Because you definitely don't want to lose your ball on a drop into the fast-flowing penalty area, because then you'd have one less golf ball. Now, if it might be a TP5 or it might be a Pro V1 or it might be something else, has anyone tapped you for more sponsorship of the golf rules questions, cancer council, longest day ball donation?
No, you're the only generous soul at this stage. But thank you very much for posting on your Instagram, because I got a couple of extra donations that way, and I really appreciate everyone's donations so far. Joey and I have nearly got up to $500. So
that's sensational.
It's going really well, and that's just within a week. So we've only got another few days to go, and really, Joey and I are really looking forward to trying to play 72 holes in one day. So it's going to be heaps of fun. So thank you to everyone that's donated so far. So the team name is? Can I Borrow Some Balls? Can I borrow some balls? Well, I'll give you some balls, but if anyone else from those big brands that we listed in some Instagram posts, if you want to donate some balls as well, more than welcome. Hey, okay, so let's get into what we're talking about this week. So some rules that you may be breaking that you don't realize that you are. Yeah, well, this is an interesting one that just happened. There was an interesting one that happened in the US Open, the Women's Open, just on the weekend, which you don't see that often. It does happen, but it's 99.9% of the time players are turning up correctly on the correct time of their tee time. Now, I had a couple of people really annoyed at this rule because they believe that, that there were 4 teeing areas that the player could have been allocated to. They played 2 courses, so there was the 1st to 10th on one course, and then the 1st and the 10th on the next course. So they thought there was a bit raw that someone was penalised when it was so confusing. but I thought that was quite funny, considering everyone else got it right. So all you got to do, like, before you start playing the game, you've just got to know one thing: when are you teeing off, and turn up 10 minutes early. I don't think it's that hard. Do you think it's that hard, Roscoe? No excuses for professionals in the professional game to not be on time for their tee time. I can't think of anything reason why they wouldn't. Myself, could I stick my hand up for being late for a tee time at Peninsula-Kingswood? Absolutely. It's because I'm burning the candle. Maybe just because I'm unorganised, I'm late. But what happens in that sense if in the club competition, if you're a couple of minutes late to your tee time? Yeah, this is an interesting one. In most cases, club golfers are going to be the club's going to be more accommodating of club golfers. You'll see that. And if someone's not going to get there to their 7:30 tee time because they overslept or the wife wasn't feeling that well, they'll ring up, and then the golf shop will allocate them a new time, maybe at 9:30, 2 hours later, or, they'll find another space, another gap. In professional golf, bad luck if you can't turn up on your time. You're basically going to be incur that penalty. But in club golf, it's a little bit more flexible, because the committee can basically change your time. But, that doesn't mean that there's an excuse for being late. And if a player is constantly late, the committee can easily sanction them from not being involved in competitions going forward. The bigger risk to me is you get slapped with being framed as a bad bloke or bad girl. And therefore people lose a bit of confidence in putting their name down with you if you're a late tee time turner-upper. But usually these days you can let someone know and it gets sorted out. But there's not necessarily the same penalties that are applied when you are on the tour. I'd be looking for a new caddy if I was that young lady at the Women's US Open. Anyway, that's what we like about golf, is that you can get labelled. They say it's bullying, but I don't think it's bullying if you're in the wrong. So if you're late to the tee time, you should be known as an unorganised disrespectful person.
Well, might be a bit harsh. That level.
Well, there's exceptional circumstances, but we all know that there's exceptional circumstances. But forgetting about them for a second, if you don't turn up to your tea time on time, and you don't even have the nous to call up beforehand, give plenty of warning.
Like if this topic falls into the area of golf rules, which aren't really officially rules, but they are common courtesies, otherwise known as etiquette. And, we could probably dedicate a whole podcast one day to etiquette, which is not rules, but they are etiquette. And there are a whole number of them. And I think some of the newer golfers that listen to this podcast about rules would really get some value out of us dedicating a lot of time to the etiquette that surrounds the game of golf, especially in competition, especially at clubland, and even as a social golfer playing social golf week in, week out in amongst a field of 200 social golfers. There are certain etiquettes, and if everyone abided by them, that social golf world would be a far better, more enjoyable place, not a better place, a more enjoyable place for a wider range of people. Picking up other people's balls because someone's sprayed one onto the middle of the next fairway, and the group coming up, just walking up, going, "Oh, there's a Pro V1, I'll just pick it up." Things like that.
Yeah. And just before we quickly move on,
yep.
Etiquette has been removed from the rules, but it's still in our lives. I still use the term, and I think it's a pretty good term because I grew up on it. But just for those listening, it's more about what we call the spirit of the game. The same thing, etiquette, spirit of the game. It's all about playing with integrity, honesty, morals and ethics, basically. So not sure why the ex-president of the US actually played golf.
Well, let's come back and dedicate an episode to etiquette and spirit of the game one time down the track. Patting down divots, and I'm going to put in pitch marks there. On your line of play and in and around that. So that's an area I think that people may not necessarily be 100% aware of. So, pitch marks on the green, you're off the green, divots, etc. What's the go there?
So you're always permitted to fix pitch marks on the green. Doesn't matter whether your ball's on or off. Okay, so you're always permitted to fix pitch marks on the green. You're always permitted to fix damage on the green caused by an outside influence, except I guess there is some exceptions such as normal maintenance practices. But outside of the green, you're not allowed to fix damage outside of the green in the teeing area. Sorry, Roscoe. You're not allowed to fix damage. So we're just talking general area, bunker, penalty areas. You're not allowed to fix damage that will improve your conditions affecting your next stroke unless it was damage caused by someone else, caused by an outside influence after your ball would come to rest. So let's try and, because this is obviously not a real simple one, but let's try and make it as simple as possible. Yeah, so if you've got a divot right beside your ball or a divot hole, in the fairway, in the rough, you wouldn't be permitted to fix that until after you've played your shot. So after it's away from your conditions. Does that make sense, Roscoe? So it's about playing the course as you find it. That's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah, okay. So can you give me a real simple example? So
if you're just off the green and there's a pitch mark, even if it's your pitch mark on your line of play, just off the green.
Yep.
Even if that was going to affect where you're trying to bump and run your chip shot,
yep,
you wouldn't be permitted to fix it because that's part of the course.
Yep. So that's probably a very common unknown scenario that you've lobbed up short of the green, your pitch mark is on the fringe, you want to putt it, you pit, and you just can't walk up and fix that because it's on the fringe of the green, not even on the fairway, but the fringe. If it's not on the putting surface, you can't repair that pitch mark because it's on your line of your intended next stroke, so you can't repair it.
Yeah, that's right. It's even if you cause the damage, if you worsened your conditions, you have to accept them.
Cool. Very good. I think that's probably the common scenario that a lot of people might not realise, that they potentially are breaking when they're playing in a competition, walking up, fixing that pitch mark on the fringe and trying to, because they want to have a putt. So very good.
And we're not saying don't fix divots. We're just saying don't fix divots when it's going to affect your next stroke.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
outside of the teeing area or the putting green or a pitch mark. That's right.
Exactly. But just do it after you've bumped and run over it.
After it's outside of your conditions.
We'll go with the next one. No, I don't think this is very common, but I think that I've definitely seen someone try to do it in a competition round. Obviously, they were stymied up beside and between it near a tree. The only foreseeable shot that they could play was trying to whack it between their legs. What's the scenario there? Can you play a shot between your legs? Yeah,
so this started, when did it start? I think it was 1934, 1944. No, it wasn't. Sorry, I've totally got that wrong. It was 1966. And Sam Snead was struggling with his putter, so he decided to putt croquet style. And it only took a year till the ruling bodies decided that that was not what they wanted to see. They didn't want to see croquet being played out in the golf course. So they said, you can't have a foot either side of your line of play when you're making a stroke. Now, that was on the green only. And from 1967 to 2019, 50 years, that was the rule. However, in 2019, they decided that they were going to make it the rule for the whole course. So basically, you cannot have your foot situated on on your line of play, on an extension of your line of play behind the ball, or one on either side of that line of play or extension of the line of play behind the ball when making a stroke. Okay, so you can't play that croquet. You can't hit it between your legs backwards. I even sent this one to the ruling bodies for their comments. If it was up the tree and you're hitting sort of that way like an axe, right, the ball's up the tree, if you're standing either side of that line of play, then that would also be not permitted.
Jeez, that's a bit rough. But anyway, it is what it is. That's the rule.
Yeah, you'd have to swing like
in the direction of a golf shot. Yeah, fair enough.
Baseball or something.
Yep.
So that absolutely that's a 1 in 1,000 occurrence, that one.
So the example that I remember seeing once, the ball was in the base of a tree near some sort of root, and the player put their sort of leg up the stump of the tree, up the tree trunk. Sorry, that's what it's called, and then one on the other side of the ball, and then just hit it through the legs. You can't do that.
No, you can't do that. If you've got, that's actually, Roscoe, you sprung one on me because that's interesting. Because, okay, I'll give this example first. If you have one foot on one side of the line and then the other foot is on the other side of the line, but it's not actually on the ground, because if we read the rule really quickly, 10.1c, the player must not make a stroke from a stance with a foot deliberately placed on each side of, or with the foot deliberately touching. So it needs to be placed or touching.
Okay. So in the tree trunk example, it's not really on the line; it's above.
Yeah, it's not. It hasn't really been.
You might have to do some further research and homework and come back.
I might have to do that one because
fill us back in with that one, Blakey, and give us the real.
Like if it's placed against the tree trunk,
yeah,
I can't get my foot up there right now, but if it's placed against the tree trunk, yes, that is placed. If it's touching against, but like the one I'm thinking, the guy's actually holding onto the tree with his legs, like with his thighs.
No.
So that would be okay because he hasn't placed his feet against the tree. Whereas the one you're talking about, he's actually placed his foot, 1 foot against the tree. That's on the other side of the line. This side of the line, he's got his foot placed on the ground. Yeah, that would be a breach.
Okay, hopefully we've described that well enough for everyone who's listening to this to get the right visual. But basically, foot up the trunk of the tree.
You know what I'm going to do?
You're going to take a photo. I'm
going to go and create that and say what you can and can't do.
There we go. Very, very good. Now, the other one here is that we've got, I think everyone should be fairly up to speed with this, but causing the ball to move in a practice stroke and not replacing it.
Yeah, so a practice stroke is not an intentional stroke. There's a difference between a practice stroke, a practice swing, and an intentional shot. Okay, there's a difference between those three. Practice swing, you're not trying to hit the ball. Practice stroke, you are trying to hit the ball, but you're not trying to hit it to score on the hole. And intentional stroke, that's what golf is all about. If you cause your ball to move with a practice swing, you're not trying to hit the ball. If you cause the ball to move, you're going to get a 1-stroke penalty in the general area, the bunker, penalty area. You're not going to get a penalty on the teeing area or the putting green, but apart from the teeing area, the putting green, penalty area, bunker, and general area, you need to replace that ball. Okay, pretty simple.
So I think that's the point that a lot of people sort of maybe want to really understand, that they accept that they've caused the ball to move in a practice stroke and the ball's moved and they have to take the penalty, but you do have to replace it.
Yeah, well, they think, well, I've made a swing, the ball's moved, I've hit it with the club, so I've just played it from its new spot. No, if you had no intention to cause the ball to move in that swing because it was a practice swing, then you haven't hit the ball technically. Doing that is the same as kicking the ball.
Yeah.
You've caused it to move other than during a stroke.
And what about if in the practice stroke you hit a twig and inadvertently that twig is sort of wedged under the ball and the ball moves? So you don't hit the ball in the practice stroke, but you hit a bit of loose impediment and then that causes the ball to move. Yeah,
that's a 1-stroke penalty and you'd have to replace it other than on the teeing area or the putting green. Correct.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I think we've covered 4 areas there. As I said, there's more, and I think this little bit of help might just clear up a few scenarios for a few players. Of course, the week in, week out rules diligent golfers that do listen probably going to be fully aware of those, but hopefully we're talking to some of the golfers out there that look to us for a little bit of informal help. So hopefully that's helped you. Let us know if it has. If it hasn't, let us know as well. Doesn't mean we're going to change it.
All feedback is welcome.
Exactly. All feedback's welcome. Now, what else have we got on the run sheet? We've got background bingo. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no. We've got one more. We've got one more from the tour, which was very pertinent because you can't talk about rules without talking about this tour star.
Well, you're just talking about loose impediments.
Exactly right. So let me just bring this up and see if we can get it going. It's yes, it is the one and only Patrick Reed. Watching the Race to Dubai final on the weekend, which is a great tournament. I love the European Tour. I'd probably prefer to watch that over the PGA Tour. I'm probably going to get slated, but Patrick Reed could have won that. He was obviously way up there in the points due to his early results and some of the performances in the majors, which accumulate points across both tours. So he turned up to win the Race to Dubai. Didn't win, but on the 17th hole of the last day, he found himself in a little situation in a bunker. So it was spot on there. You could see that, what you don't see in the podcast, and you look at the vision. If you go to the YouTube site of Golf Rules Questions, it's the last video there. There might be some more by the time you get to it. But have a look at that. And the European Tour cameras scope right in on the ball. And in my mind's eye, I'm hearing I'm looking at Andrew Coulthart and Paul McGinley looking at each other, shaking their heads. But Andrew Coulthart does say there's not really anything there. And if you look at that scoped in vision, it just looks like a